Hey, hello, how are you? I hope everything's fine. Uh, it's a pleasure to be here talking to you and to be talking about a topic that is very dear to my heart, very close to my values, and very much connected to my work experience, to my life in this animal production sector. And I have a few slides that I would like to share with you. So bear with me. I'm gonna put them on. And the topic that I'm going to talk to you and discuss with you and be open for questions after it is the role of micronutrition and feed additives in addressing the sustainability of animal proteins. Uh, we are talking about sustainability. We are talking about animal proteins. We are talking about intelligence. We are talking about how we can drive improvements, how we can keep having our social license to operate, and how micronutrition and feed additives can help in that process. So I hope that by the end, you get to the conclusion with me that micronutrients and feed additives have a very important role to play. In fact, they have a low-hanging fruit role to play in addressing the sustainability of animal proteins. Thank you very much for the organizers, and thank you very much, for all the other presenters that presented before me. Great insights, great presentations, great information so far, and I really appreciate being here. I'm very proud and happy to be here speaking to you about this. So thank you very much, all of you. Livestock have a very important role in our society. I think we all agree with this. Animal proteins have a very they are a very important source of nutrition. They provide nutrients that vegetables cannot provide, and they are also very dense food stuff. They are very good for our health, obviously, if eaten in within the certain limits, like everything in our lives, right? I mean, if we eat too much, then it's not health anymore. So, like everything else, they have to be eaten, in balance with vegetables, with fruits, with grains, and but that's not the focus of my presentation. I just want to remind that livestock have a role to play also when it comes to the upcycle of agricultural byproducts. They digest. They have the capabilities to digest and to use, a lot of raw materials, ingredients that go into their feed that we humans cannot digest, that we humans cannot use, including, the use of grasslands that are not suitable for crops or for vegetables. And we're talking about millions and millions of hectares around the planet, but also all the byproducts, that are coming out of a series of agriculture, uh, other products. They use marginal lands, as I said, lands that cannot be used for crops. They play a key role in nutrient cycling and soil fertility. And if you have the chance to watch, a movie from Netflix called Kiss the Ground, you probably saw the example from Gaby Brown in US, where the animals play a very important role in improving the soil health, in helping fertilize the soils, and help keep the plants in check in grasslands, and also even in helping create aeration to the soil. So very fascinating. So animals, the manure they generate, are a very important source of nutrients, and including carbon to the soil, including the nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash that the plants need. And also livestock is a key component to socioeconomic status. There are millions, if not billions, of people that depend directly or indirect of the animal protein sector. And as I said, is also part of a health balanced diet, but has a large environmental footprint and many areas to improve, uh, especially when you look at 2050, when we are going to need to grow the current production of animal proteins by 70%. given or taken, but definitely, there's a huge growth happening in the population and in the people eating animal proteins, and that's going to put an extra burden on the environment on a series of footprints that we see here on the screen. Just to give two examples, one from greenhouse gas emissions. Today, animal farming accounts for 14.5% of all human-derived greenhouse gas emissions. If we don't do anything, if we keep producing, animals the way we produce today, exactly the same way, by 2030, this 14.5% will be 27%. And with the projected growth from FAO on protein consumption, it will become 81%. So imagine if people are telling us that we are the next cigarette, right, with 14.5%. Imagine if we get to 27, even to 81. That's not imaginable, right? The society would never accept that. And these projections are obviously considering that the rest of all the human emissions by 2030, they will be at 31 gigaton, and by 2050 by 13 gigaton, considering that the other sectors will be decarbonizing, right, will be reducing their footprints by the Paris Agreement. We have to stay within 1.5 degrees, so they have to reduce, just like we in agriculture have also to reduce our footprints. If they do their business and we don't do ours, you can see here, the consequences. It's just not acceptable. And feed is in the center, front and center of all of this. So when we look at the footprints of animal proteins, feed is responsible directly for 41% of all these emissions. But when you think that feed is also playing a role on the enteric fermentation of ruminants, and the feed additives a even more important role, and that role will be growing in the future. We are talking about another 44%. So here, just summing those two, we're talking about over 80% of the footprints coming directly and indirectly from the feed process, the feed production, the way the feed is digested by the animal, the gases that are getting out of that digestion, but then also what gets out of the animal. So the manure management, it's another 10%. And there's also ways to reduce the emissions from manure, working with feed additives, and influencing, the way animals process the feed they're eating. So a lot of work to be done here, and there are targets, right? If you look at the IPCC report that is connected to the Paris Agreement, there are specific targets for agriculture, forest, and land use change. And we have to eliminate CO2 emissions entirely by 2050 in this sector, reduce methane by 25% to 35% by 2030, and reduce nitrous oxide, which is the most potent, greenhouse gas out there, by 10 to 15% by 2030. So huge objectives for our sector, and animal proteins, play a very important role. Another quick example from water, the majority of the water is, especially the blue water, is consumed by agriculture. So if we talk about withdrawals, we're talking about 68% for agricultural production. If we talk about consumption, so all the water that is used to produce food is 92%. So yes, we have to take shorter showers, but the biggest footprint is in the food we eat. And animal proteins, obviously, because they concentrate nutrients, because they use a lot of raw materials, ingredients in the feed that are coming from crops that are used irrigation. You have a concentration of footprints also in the animal proteins. So, long story short, for animal protein to play a role in a balanced nutrition moving forward, to be accepted by society, it must be more sustainable, right? I think we all agree with that. So we have to expand food production without expanding agricultural land. In fact, we should be reducing the amount of land we use. There will be less land available per person on the planet. Protect and restore the natural ecosystems, and limit agricultural land shifts. So avoid land conversion, but also do an agriculture that is more integrated with nature, that is providing back to nature and protecting nature. increase the seafood supply via sustainable aquaculture. Aquaculture uses a lot of fish meal, fish oil that is coming from predatory, fisheries in many of the cases, or fisheries that are overfished. So we have to replace that. We have to look at solutions that can replace the amount of fish we have to take from oceans to feed fish on aquaculture, right? Reduce greenhouse gas emissions, nitrogen, phosphorus flows to the environment. There is a huge impact there, as we saw on the greenhouse gas emissions, but also nitrogen, phosphorus. All the eutrophication, acidification is caused by them, and from both crops, but also from the manure of the animals. And dietary shifts and reducing food loss and waste are also necessary. And and we have to also work to reduce, the amount of food, especially animal proteins, that we ended up producing for the trash, right? That's not nice. I mean, there's still in average 20% of all the animal proteins we produce ended up going to the trash. And so we prioritize, we put our focus, we propose, the industry to put our efforts on 6 business drivers. And I'm saying business drivers because this is becoming really part of business. The environmental sustainability, the environmental impacts are just getting added to the economic and the social ones that the companies, including the farming community, is already addressing. It's the last element, right, that we are adding to our focus areas in business. And this is not anymore a conversation of NGOs, a conversation of activists. This is really becoming part of business. And we have to tackle antimicrobial resistance. We have to reduce the amount of antibiotics we use in animal protein, especially the ones that are concurrent to the human use. Reduce our reliance on marine resources, as I already spoke. Reduce emissions for livestock, so not only greenhouse gas emissions, but also nitrogen, phosphorus, and everything. Make efficient use of natural resources, so how we can produce more with less land, with less use of raw materials that could be feeding humans directly. Improve the quality of animal proteins. By improving the quality, improving the nutrient content, not only we can provide more with less, but also we can reduce food loss and waste. There are some very cool solutions out there that increase the shelf life of products, that reduce oxidation of meats, for instance, with the increase of vitamins. Some very interesting things that where feed, plays an important role. And improve the lifetime performance of farm animals. That has been the bread and butter of the animal production sector, right? How we can produce more within the life of the animal, how we can extract more during the lifetime, but also how we can extend the lifetime of animals when it makes sense. And emission reductions are possible, are within reach, just by improving best practices, just by increasing productivity gains, improving the nutrient utilization by the animals, and inhibit the enteric methane emissions, things that are within our reach. There are already solutions for all those three, and we're going to be talking more about that. We can have huge impacts, from the get-go in all the species. And we're talking about reductions that are all double digit, that go from 17% in very efficient systems in poultry, for instance, where there's already a lot of efficiency being gained. There's still room for further improvements, up to 41% in small ruminants, or close to 40% in cattle in ruminants. So huge, potential for improvements. But too often, animal protein producers are judged by global averages, right? I mean, we see this every day, especially with the meat replacements, comparing, how better they are than animal proteins. But when they compare with an animal protein, they compare their very controlled, well improved footprints with a global average of beef or chickens or eggs, and that's not fair, right? Because in the global averages, we have all the producers of the world being taken in consideration, including idle cattle, for instance, in Africa or in India, including herds that have very low productivity. In those cases, the footprints skyrocket because you are dividing, a big footprint by a very small number of kilos or pounds of meats and eggs and milk being produced and fish being produced. So it's not fair to use global averages. We have to measure. We have to measure the specific footprint of each farm or each one of the production value chains that are, ending up in a final product to the customer. And if we don't measure, not only we cannot talk about it, not only we can defend ourselves against these global averages that are people are throwing at us, but also we cannot improve, right? Uh, Everybody that is working with genetics or nutrition knows that if we don't measure, we don't know where we are, and we cannot take measures to improve, our numbers. And the good news is that there is a way to understand the animal footprint by looking at getting data and looking at raw material production, feed use, and manure disposal. By getting data and analyzing these different elements or different segments of animal production, we can calculate the environmental footprints. There is relevant LCA metrics, life cycle analysis, uh, metric systems that are critical to measure and provide us the know-how to reduce the footprints in animal production. And there are methods, databases, calculation tools. There's a whole science, behind the LCAs, and there are a lot of organizations out there connected to the Paris Agreement, like the IPCC guidelines, but also from ISO. There's ISO 14040 that provides, the basis for calculating environmental footprints. You even have specific guidelines for animal proteins, how to calculate footprints for animal proteins using all of those other guidelines and rules. And that's the FAO LEAP initiative that provides those guidelines. And there are also specific guidelines from regions like the PATH guidelines from Europe. There are guidelines in Thailand, there are guidelines in US that are giving some specifics, to how you calculate footprints in those regions. And it can be done, and it's not easy. I mean, it's a very complex calculation systems, algorithms that you have to use, a lot of modeling, but it can be done. And it can be done using real farm data. So if we have data on land use from the farm, if we have data on the farming practice, if we have data on all the inputs that go into animal production, like energy, diesel, like water, like the feed ingredients, all the feed ingredients and their volumes and their sources that go into the feed of the animals, so the feed composition, we can calculate the footprints. And we can calculate footprints not only on greenhouse gas emissions, but on a series of other footprints. And that's the good news. And it can be done, and it has been done. And I'm going to show you, a very cool thing that got launched recently that allows us to do that now in animal proteins. So our stakeholders are challenging us, right? And I say stakeholders for the animal protein sector. We saw that there's a reasoning behind this. Everybody's concerned about the planet, especially now, after this pandemic that we face it. So everybody wants to live in a more sustainable world, that we don't get into troubles like the one we got with COVID, right? And the feed is in the center of all of this. As I said, between 50 and 80% of the feed impact, or 50 to 80% of the animal protein impact is coming from feed. It's the biggest impact by far. And we have the consumers wanting to know how food is produced and what impact it has on the planet, especially the newer generations. We have investors that want to mitigate risks and are demanding all the companies they invest on through loans or even through the shares they buy. They want to know, and they are putting again a lot of pressure for the companies to release and to measure and to improve their footprints. And regulators are also setting new boundaries in which farms can operate. Just look at the Green Deal in Europe, for instance, right? That is under construction. And animal protein producers are gearing up. A lot of companies are getting those pressures. They are feeling them through their retailers, directly through the investors, through their customers, and they are taking action. There are only three examples here, but we could speak for hours about examples of companies that are already moving ahead. And this is obviously, moving the pressure into the feed space, because all these companies that are making a carbon neutral commitment, or they are producing a carbon neutral milk or carbon neutral beef, they have to reduce the footprints at the production level. Uh, Until now, those programs are niche, right? I mean, we don't have a big uh, a big production sector or a big product line that is carbon neutral yet. Those are niche products, but we see a lot of movement. We see a lot of companies and whole industries, like in the dairy case, the whole industry, not only in US, not only in Europe, in many European countries, but also globally through IDF and the Global Dairy Platform, working together to create a global commitment and a global program to reduce their carbon footprints and become carbon neutral by 2050. So all of this movement, it's coming to the feed sector, right? Because by the end, if you don't address the feed, if you don't address the footprints at the farm level, the footprints of the feed the animals are eating, you're not going to be able to reach this carbon neutral. There's no way. It's, again, 50 to 70%. And it also makes business sense. All these companies are doing this, obviously, because they care about the planet. They are getting the pressure from the stakeholders, but they also see a business opportunity. And if you look at this New York Stern University research done recently, they found out that sustainably market products, they grew faster in the consumer good products by 3.8 times, and they are growing much faster than conventionally market products by 7.1 times. And also they capture a premium price, they capture a better price. So it makes business sense. And there are a series of examples out there showing that. And we, DSM, that have been working on sustainability for decades, we have been measuring our environmental footprints for many, many years. We are transparently sharing the footprints of our products, our feed additives, our premixes with our customers. And we got really concerned about all of this, right? And this has been in the works for 3 years. I came to DSM exactly to work on this. Because we believe, that if we have a measurement combined with practical science-based proven solutions to unlock the value of sustainability, we can help the animal protein sector to become more sustainable, to become more transparent, to be able to talk about their specific footprints, and to have the social license to operate in the future. So I would like to share with you firsthand, this very cool service that we launched that is focused on addressing the sustainability of animal proteins. So there's a short film that I would like to share with you, and bear with me here. I hope you enjoy.
As the world's population grows, so too will the demand for animal protein. In fact, by as much as 70% by 2050 beyond the planet's boundaries if we continue business as usual. There is increasing awareness and, importantly, the acceptance that we all have a role to play, from consumers through to producers, in order to make real improvements in sustainability. If we want to feed the rising population sustainably and responsibly, the time to change is now. Together, we must start to accurately measure, report, and improve on the environmental footprints of animal production, along with the existing practices on economics, food safety, animal health and welfare. Credible and validated science-based data will not only guide these improvements, but help to clearly communicate the results. Being purpose-led, we at DSM are listening to these needs. We understand what needs to be done, and our response? Sustell, an intelligent sustainability service that will improve the environmental sustainability of animal protein production. Sustell combines the most advanced environmental footprinting calculation tool with expert sustainability and nutritional knowledge to create tailor-made, practical solutions and business development projects, the result of which is to enhance the environmental sustainability and profitability of animal protein production. Several years in development, Sustel brings together the power of the Animal Protein Sustainability Footprint Tool, combined with the independent expertise of Blanc and the advanced nutritional science and broad scientific network of DSM to deliver meaningful change to the sustainability of animal protein. Sustel unlocks the value of animal protein sustainability by evaluating and understanding the different stakeholders' sustainability needs and business opportunities. Sustel achieves the seemingly impossible, simplifying the complexity of measuring, validating, and improving the environmental sustainability of animal protein, transparently, scientifically, farm by farm, system by system. Animal farming companies and the associated value chain have, for the first time, a powerful solution to measure, compare, and improve the sustainability of animal protein. Because we listened to everybody. Because everybody has a role to play in producing the food the population needs, sustainably and responsibly, and within planetary boundaries. If not us, who? If not now, when? Together, we make it possible. Sustel.
So, as we can see, this is just an example of a solution available that now, solves that problem of measuring specifically, the footprints of animal proteins. And I'm sure there are others out there, other calculators, other services that can help you, can help the sector in this journey. And the most important thing is that we intelligently unlock the value of sustainability, right? That we give the companies the ownership on their footprint, so they are not judged by industry averages anymore. That we implement best practices using this data, using the findings, from this analysis. That we reduce the footprint and we demonstrate those reductions in footprints while reducing, the risks for the financial sector and enhancing the resilience of animal production, improving, productivity, increasing, production with the same resources. Also, it's an opportunity to engage the employees, engage your internal stakeholders, creating a culture of purpose and sustainability in your business, and also elevate your company and the brand of your company to become a leader in sustainability. So it's now possible, right? But then the challenge is, okay, now I'm measuring, now I know where I am, I know where I can improve or where I should improve, what are my gaps, what are my opportunities. I mean, with a service like Sustel or with other similar services, you can do that. But then you have to improve, right? And sustainability is a journey. It's not something that you're going to do at once. There's no silver bullet. There's not one, two things that you do and okay, now I'm sustainable. No, sustainability is not a final destination, right? It is a journey. But feed additives can help. And when we talk about feed additives, I'm talking about minerals, vitamins, carotenoids, enzymes, eubiotics, antimycotoxins, and very new compounds like 3-NOP, as Bovaer or Veramaris, which is a omega-3 from algae producing fermentation tanks. And there are a lot of new things to come, right, from DSM, but also from other companies. The important thing is that all of them, especially when used together, that can not only improve feed conversion rates and weight gains and reduce, crude protein in the diet, but also they can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They can improve the sustainability use of raw materials. They can protect natural resources by reducing the amount of natural resources we use. They can reduce the emissions of nitrogen and phosphorus, and with that protect, water flows and protect, land. They can reduce, the amount of land use and loss of biodiversity. So there are a lot of benefits, by using these solutions, and with a service like Sustel with the calculation of environmental footprints, you can uh, demonstrate. You can not only learn and understand what those impacts are, but you can demonstrate that. And this is not us talking. This is not DSM saying that, but even McKinsey, the largest consulting firm out there, they did an analysis on agriculture and climate change, and they found that animal feed additives play a very important role in helping. Again, there's no silver bullet, as you can see. You have to work with many techniques, but when you look at feed additives, there's a huge potential, 299 million tons of CO2 that can be reduced, million tons of CO2 equivalent that can be reduced just by animal feed additives. Without saying that, there's also opportunities here on optimization of animal feed mix. There's opportunities for improving the feed grain processing for improved digestibility. There's opportunities to improve the digestion of manure through an aerobic process. So all of them also connected to feed, right? And this study, I'm not getting into the details here, but it even shows what reductions in cost or cost savings you can have by applying this technology. So a win-win, right? You reduce costs, you have cost savings at the same time, you reduce, footprints. So this is also supported by FAO, the LEAP work from FAO. They even have guidelines on how to look at the environmental performance of feed additives in livestock. They demonstrate, they prove, that feed additives have a very important role to play, and they give guidelines in how to use feed additives, how to measure their footprints. So very interesting study that I also suggest to take a look. But the fact that feed has the highest potential for reductions, it is the highest footprint out there in animal production. And we, together with Blanc, we decided to do a road test. We took the LEAP guidelines and we said, okay, let's do a road test. Let's use those guidelines. Let's use Sustel and the APS footprint that we use in Sustel to demonstrate how these guidelines from LEAP can help us reduce the environmental footprints with the use of feed additives. So we did this study. It took us a year to do this study, and it was peer review by leading universities in this area of LCA calculations for feed. It's available online. Here's the address. If you go to the Blanc consultant website, it's also going to be soon published by LEAP, by FAO. But it was a road test case that we did by looking at 3 production systems, looking at the Benelux production systems for pigs, dairy cows, and broilers. So already a very efficient, high productivity, production systems. And then we apply in the pigs for fattening, in the dairy cow, and in the broilers for fattening, in the life stage of growth and fattening, and there in milk production, we apply a series of enzymes, carotenoids, vitamins, and through those combined supplementations, we look at the reductions in footprints in 4 key environmental metrics. In fact, we look at 16 different environmental metrics, the same ones that we have in Sustel, for instance, but we focus on key 4 of them. So climate change, eutrophication marine, eutrophication freshwater, and respiratory inorganics. This is very much connected to ammonia. Eutrophication freshwater connected to phosphorus emissions, eutrophication marine to nitrogen emissions. So we apply all these different products, different feed additives, and if you go to the paper, you're going to be able to learn more about them, who exactly they are. But we look at what impacts they had on the efficiencies, on productivity, on the reductions of crude protein, reductions in mortality, or reductions in waste. And we calculated through the APS footprint tool using the LEAP guidelines the reductions in footprints, even in a very efficient, very productive system. We found double-digit reductions, very interesting. So, for instance, on climate change, we saw reductions from 3% in pigs to 9% in dairy to 13% in broilers. and it's quite amazing. Eutrophication in phosphorus, reductions of 6, 10, 13%. In respiratory inorganics was quite amazing, reductions of up to 14% in pigs connected to the reductions in ammonia, a very serious problem in many places. And then eutrophication marine, caused by nitrogen also with sensible reductions up to 11% in dairy. So we could see, we could learn, from this case study that it's possible to calculate, that it can be done. It was peer review. It was, proving to be an effective system to calculate footprints. And we managed to learn that even in high efficient, high productivity systems, there's still a role for feed additives to play. And in the paper, we even go deeper. We can demonstrate through this methodology what part of the footprint reductions are coming from each one of the different products or the different feed additives that were used. So if you go into the paper, you can see all those specifics for each one of the species, the breakdown from not only from what feed additives those reductions came from, on climate change, on freshwater eutrophication, marine eutrophication, respiratory inorganics, but also from what part of the farm, of the production system, those footprints came from. So you can slice and dice the data in different ways, and you're going to find all of that in the paper. Another case study, the footprint of 1 kilo of milk, also from a Benelux 200 dairy cow farm, was quite amazing. This one show a 20% greenhouse gas emission reductions from a very low baseline already, 1.2 kilos of CO2 equivalent per kilo of milk, which is already low. We managed to get that down to 0.9. So a fantastic reduction using here 3 interventions, an amylase that enhance the digestibility of corn, of maize, 6% reduction from vitamins and beta carotene, improving the animal health, fertility, and also a little bit of productivity, and 11% reduction in carbon footprint through a 30% reduction in methane from this new compound called 3-NOP. So very important reductions. The conclusion that I would like to leave with you is that feed additives are the low-hanging fruit. There are already many solutions available, as you could see. They are effective, they are economically viable at the same time that they reduce footprints, they can improve profitability, they can reduce, costs, they can improve productivity. They're readily effective. So you add them to the feed. As soon as the animals start to eat that feed, they already become effective. You already start to see the effects, or even before, right? Because you formulate the feed in a different way. You can reduce crude protein. You can reduce the amount of soy, for instance, that you put in the diet by using certain feed additives. It's scalable and measurable. You can scale this to the whole farm, to the whole production system of one single company or one single country, and it's measurable, as we saw here on the sleep example, and it can be very easily measurable and don't require investments. You don't have to change your facilities, you don't have to change your genetics, you don't have to change your equipment. It's already all there. You just add feed additives to the diet, allowing the animal protein industry to take a substantial improvement on their footprints right now. It can be done right now. So I hope feed additives start to be, they're already being heavily used, but I hope with this the more feed additives will be used in animal nutrition. With that, I would like to finish asking, if not us, who? If not now, when? I think we all agree that this is the time. We don't have time to lose, and we can only accomplish a more animal protein, a more sustainable animal protein, if we work together. There's no way we cannot do this alone. You cannot do this alone. We have to work together. We have to join forces. There's no silver bullet, as we saw. Yes, feed additives can help, but we also have to improve in other areas. But working together, I'm sure we can make it possible. Okay. Thank you very much. This was my message. Uh, I don't think so. We're going to have time for questions, but please send me through the organization, send me your questions, comments, and I'm on LinkedIn. If you put there Carlos Saviani, you're gonna find me on LinkedIn. I would be more than glad to connect with you and to discuss more this topic that is very close to my heart, as I said. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the event, and it was fantastic to be talking to you. Take care. Have a nice one. Bye bye.